Welcome to It's Not What You Think with Mordy Levine, where we get to meet and talk to spiritual teachers from around the world. Our guests are from all walks of life, and we hear about how they got into spirituality and how they navigate the world we all live in. This is episode 6, recorded on April 6th, 2021. My guest today is Tracy Bleier, a beautiful writer, teacher, and friend, a teacher of yoga, a teacher of writing, and a teacher of life. I'm honored and grateful that I was able to speak with her and learn the impactful, loving, and skillful way that she leads her life. I talk with Tracy about how she uses writing as a spiritual path and how she's able to share that with her students. We were also able to talk about how listening and giving space, whether to ourselves or others, is critical to a joyful life. Tracy can be reached through her website, tracybleierpractice.com. It's Not What You Think podcast is available on all streaming platforms, so please like, comment, share, or subscribe on your favorite platform. That support is enough to continue to allow us to produce this show. Our interviews are with people who may have opinions different from yours or mine, so while we keep an open mind, just remember, it's not what you think. So this week we are welcoming Tracy Bleier. This is part of the podcast where I read off all of your accomplishments and your accolades. So let me start by saying that I've known Tracy for 25 years. She is a genuine, authentic, she's shaking her head no, genuine, authentic, and a beautiful.
I'm just like, my mind is blown. 25 years.
Beautiful human being. There are very few of them these days, so I feel very lucky to know her. Tracy Bleier, Bleier. Tracy Bleier is a writer, a teacher par excellence, teacher of yoga, teacher of writing, teacher of meditation, a teacher of life. I made that up myself. She's happily married and lives in Chicago with her husband, Mitch Bleyer, a great yogi in his own right. I hope to have him on our podcast. We'll see how today goes, if she's still talking to me after the podcast. Tracy's a proud mother of 3 boys, a dog, and a cat. And you can contact her at tracybleierpractice.com. Welcome, Tracy, to It's Not What You Think. Yay! This is where the audience jumps in. How are you and how was your week? I hear you're getting ready for camping trip.
Yeah, I was camping.
Oh, you already were camping. You got it
Yeah,
out.
yeah. So we left over the Easter weekend, figuring no one would be in the campground, and we were correct. So we had pretty much the entire, I'm from the East Coast, so
Right.
for me, exploring these Midwestern, sort of camping country towns are like really cool. So we went up to Wisconsin, and there's a glacial lakes called Kettle Moraine, and we spent 2 nights sleeping on the ground. And well, my husband, I say camping and everyone's like, you can't believe I go camping, this Jewish girl from New York. But my husband, I think we call it one step below glamping. Like, he's got like all the equipment
Right.
and we bring our entire bed there. And
Right.
we could be in the REI like magazine for how we like
It's
style
funny.
it out and cook.
It's taking your apartment, just putting it outside.
Pretty much. It's cool though. It's 2 days of being outside on the ground. And I think that I didn't appreciate that when I complained all the time when I was younger, but now being older, and we do it now every year and we go as much as we can. It's like, it's medicine. So
Oh, for sure.
I came back and I feel like this blast of inspiration, just having been without a screen, my phone, and just sleeping on the ground for 2 days and being outside. The body's like, thank you.
We underestimate the power of nature until all of a sudden you experience it and you go, oh, this is what nature is like. Oh yeah, this is familiar. So that's wonderful. Yeah, medicine. That's a good word for it. So it was great seeing and speaking with you last week for the first time in 20, 25 years. It only took us 2 hours to catch up. My wife was super happy about it, so was I. So we met each other when we lived in the same building in Connecticut.
Yeah.
You gave birth to your first son, Charlie, around the same time my wife gave birth to our son, Jonah, who is editing this podcast. So it was like a match made in heaven, and it's been a long road since that time. Who would have known where we'd be now? So it was exciting for me to watch your evolution in the last years, and happy to see you happy. So how did you first get into yoga or meditation or spiritual practice? Where were you? And I'm sure you've told the story a million times, so it's a million and one.
It's such a good story to tell, especially to you,
Oh
because
yeah.
you are really the source of my interest in the spiritual practice of yoga. So I can't wait to tell 10 million people that you're the reason. Um, I started with you talking about it and being, I was super curious. And on my deck in Cape Cod or in that living room, you were showing me a few poses, and for whatever reason, they intrigued me. And when I went home, I went to the studio you were practicing at the time in Greenwich. I remember having a phone call with you, thanking you or something. And you said, "How do you feel?" And I was a type A, typical New York, deeply hard on myself about every activity I'd ever do, probably really punishing on my body. At that time, I was probably running a lot, and I always felt like exercise gave me that endorphin. But the feeling I had after doing the yoga practice was not that same amazing feeling, but it was definitely in the category of special. And I think I said to you, I feel, and it was like deep pause, amazing. And you said, that's the way you should always feel.
Hmm.
And
I got. I think I said I got that out of a book somewhere.
And of course, I don't want people to think that when you get onto a spiritual practice like yoga, it's like rainbows and cherries and you're all like, it's all amazing. But what I took from that, and I think when the lights went off, where I got even more curious, was why am I reserving or kind of putting feeling great or not using feeling pleasurable or feeling at ease or whatever it is that we feel from a bodily standpoint after we move. Why don't we use that as a benchmark to pursue things in life so that most of our life is filled with that sensation, such that when we are going through discomfort, we actually have the support, because we're not depleted, because things are going to come up that suck and that are difficult and unexpected and stressful. And I think if we're not building a life that's pleasurable, both in our relationships, in our work, then we're constantly normalizing stress, and then we're going to constantly be depleted and sick. So for me, I really wanted to chase that. After you said that, I was like, why aren't I making that more of a priority, to make, like, to really be activist about bringing that amazingness into my life as a priority. And that was tough because not everything in my life was that experience, like my relationship at the time, I was married, and it really ended up um, making me really reevaluate what it was that I was choosing to do with my life. So that was huge. You just saying, well, that's how you should always feel. And you know what? Like, I believe that is our right as human beings, to live and create a life that we feel pleasure and abundant. And um, I don't believe we should just reserve that for a holiday weekend.
No, I'm with you 100%. So my experience in entering the called the spiritual world, for lack of a better word, is I don't think I shared the story with you, but I was in graduate school in Chicago, which is where you are now, and a guy and I was active. I was a tennis player or something like that, basketball player in Brooklyn, but wasn't very happy in my life. And the way, of course, looking back now, I realized that I felt like I was in a box. I didn't know it at the time, and I met a guy who said, "Hey, man, I teach karate. You want to? It's free. It's a club. You want to try it?" And I said, "Sure." And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like, I'm from Brooklyn. What are these guys going to teach me? Come on. And I also remember I'm about 10 minutes into the class, and I'm thinking like, I am not going to make it through this class. I can't believe that I'm doing this. This is hard as hell. They meditated on their knees for about a minute or two before class and after class, and that was hell. I got absolutely nothing out of the meditation. And but I will tell you that when class was over, the light bulb went off in about a 10,000 watt in my brain that I've been in a box, and now I'm not in a box right now.
Right.
So, But for some people, they just stay in the box. Maybe it's like the frog in the frying pan. We just kind of get used to it, and the water gets warmer and warmer and warmer, and then before you know it, you're 60, 70, 80 years later, and you're dead.
Right. Some people I think they don't hear the call. Like you said, you kind of were getting a sense, I don't know if everybody has a chance to hear it, but it's a wonderful gift when you do, and then it's a question of, okay, now that you recognize that you have choice in the matter, I don't know if people realize people we know, I'm sure, um, if there's a choice, that they actually can be sovereign over the life they want to create and create their own normal for whatever that is, instead of the system that we're all kind of like
I think that
instructed to create.
some people, not me and you,
No.
other people, um, they want to hold on to what they've got. And it may not be very good, but at least I'm holding on to it. And, and they don't want to venture out and take a chance, because what happened in your case, in my case, is all of a sudden there's light at the end of this tunnel. I didn't even know I was in a tunnel, and now there's light there. Oh my God! And like you said, we're going to chase it. So some people are just I don't want to say comfortable, but they're used to where they are, and that's okay. I don't want to take a chance, and in some sense, I get that, but I think it's unfortunate. But I think there are ways as a teacher to be able to not coax them out of their tunnel or out of their box, but show them a little tiny light here, a little tiny light there. And maybe they'll jump out of the box then, but maybe it'll take them 5, 10, 20 years until they realize that, oh, I can do this other thing here. So not all seeds that we plant are going to blossom, like in your case, in my case, boom, it's like a rocket ship. But some people maybe just plant a few seeds and maybe they get it later in life, or maybe they get it in some other lifetime. Who knows?
Exactly. Or it could be just titration. I agree.
Yeah.
I think that I think mostly a lot of that not knowing that there's another way, or really being able to reflect on whether you are, really happy, for lack of a better word. I think that's a scary thing to reflect on, because it might mean restructuring some things, or having a voice, or having a say in making change. But I
Yeah,
think
and I
that,
think I hate to use the word best, but one of the examples that I see in that is really with, frankly, with women. We don't have to talk too much about it, but there's domestic abuse because women are afraid to leave, and their fear is grounded because they will get hurt physically, mentally, emotionally. There's kids involved, blah blah blah, and it's a effing nightmare. But then, you know, God bless the women or the organizations that can help them leave, because they can then have a life and be free. So, but there's an example where a lot of people, it could be men also, that are being abused, that they just don't want to leave because it's better to be better what I know than what I don't know, I guess.
100%, because we don't know what we don't know,
Right. You don't know that you can get out.
or
Exactly.
you don't know who you are if you're not in what you're in, so that's terrifying.
Right.
you know
Or I used this quote in the last podcast, but maybe someone didn't see it. I think it was Mark Twain who said, "It's not what you know that gets you in trouble. That it's not what you know that gets you in trouble, or it's not what you don't know. It's what you know that just ain't so." That's what it is. It's not what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know that just ain't so. Meaning we think we know, but no, that's not that's not what it's about.
Right. We think we know.
We
That's
think
like
we know.
delusion. Yeah.
Exactly,
Really nice
exactly.
when you realize you don't have to know. It's not your job to really know everything, and you don't need to know really much, other than that you don't know a lot.
Right.
And
And
that keeps you
that's
curious.
my job. That is actually the job now,
Yeah.
which is I noticed years and years go by and I'm more and more saying to myself or others, I don't know.
Me too.
I think
Which
it's possible. This is possible too. Just don't know.
Yeah. I think when I was teaching more asana, my favorite response when people would ask me, like, well, do I, straighten my leg this or put my hand there? And I was like, it depends. I mean, there isn't just an absolute. I mean,
Right.
I believe I'm reading this amazing book, and she's been a really like strong influence in the last few months, this book called Pleasure Activism. Have you heard of it?
No, this sounds great. I love it.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And she talks about, she uses, the language of abundance as abundant justice. And if we can all just take steps toward, allowing for what it means to create new normals outside of our, constructs. We talk about, there's so many things that are just systemic that we don't even realize we're just like playing out until we realize that,
Yeah.
it's hard to build a really creative life. However, one of the things she says is that all systematizing is science fiction. Like the more we try to systemize something, the more, completely, there's always another. It's like Stephen Hawking's, like he spent his first part of his life proving one theory. He spent the second half disproving the same theory.
Right.
So I think it's always like, it depends. The variables are so infinite and they're always changing. Like, truth is changing, truth is always changing.
Right. Well, you said something, the word systemic, what clicked into my mind is that, I forget if it's scientists or great yogi masters, and I think it was Deepak Chopra that said this, that we think 50,000 thoughts in a day, 60,000, right, something like that. And that's quite interesting. But I think what's more interesting to me is the fact that the next day, 95% of those are the same thoughts.
I know.
The same repetitive.
We're in a trance. Yeah. I know. It's amazing.
Breaking.
The mind's amazing.
It's an amazing
the mind's
trickster.
Amazing.
It's an amazing trickster.
It's wild. It's shameless. It's, it could be utterly unpredictable. And yeah, it's fascinating. I think the more fascinated we can be by it and the less like, you gotta stop thinking so much,
right,
the more you learn. I mean, at least for me, curious. That became, curiosity has been like my biggest catalyst for change. Is, can I just be curious about this instead of worried about it or trying to fix it or make it wrong, or can I just be curious, be more wondering, and that really helped open up a conversation for everything for me. Parenting, it changed the game from being self-deprecating, and like really hard on myself about everything, to just wondering, what would it be like, is like one of my favorite prefixes for a question. What would it be like if I did this, whether it's moving my body or talking to my son, what would that be like? And the answer sometimes is like really difficult, and okay, so what's difficulty feel like, so I'm big into curiosity.
Yeah.
It's changed my life. Sure.
What's beautiful about that is, there's different ways people get motivated. Some people are motivated by goals. Oh, I'm going to make this much money. I'm going to open this yoga studio. I'm going to do this. I'm going to climb to the top of the mountain right over there. I'm going to climb. I'm getting to the top. Whatever the goals are. And other types of motivation are more process oriented, which is, I'm just going to be curious about this. Yes, I am going to go in the direction towards the top of the mountain. Maybe I'll get to the top. I hope I get to the top. But if I don't get to the top, that's okay. That's not the primary goal. The primary goal is, can I learn? Can I be curious about how I raise my child, the decisions that I make? It's not always going to be black and white. I think this might be it, but I might try that. And if it works, great. If not, at least I'll learn something. And what that does is that takes you out of the success-failure cycle. Because if you make it to the top, success. You don't make it to the top, failure. And I think it was Pema Chodron who, I'm pretty sure, he wrote a book saying, fail better.
Right. Yeah, it's my favorite.
You don't have to read the book. You just have to look at the title and you know what she's saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, the failure stories are the hero stories, they're the most humbling stories, the most powerful stories. Yeah, I love Pema. One of the works, I think it was like her, When Things Fall Apart, she has like
right.
Her introduction, she like her big like to do is like hearing somebody say, don't let life go hard in your heart. And, I think that to ask yourself, is it possible? What would it be like to keep my heart open, whatever that is, no matter what? And that takes a particular kind of strength, a particular kind of steadiness and precision.
And trust. And
100%. I feel like life is constantly like, do you trust me? That's what life is asking. Do you trust me? Because if it's like you said, it's not like adding up to your like end point, then we feel like God, life sucks, but life isn't getting you, life isn't trying to get you. Um, I was just thinking when you were saying about that plan, it's a lot like in writing. When I teach writing, I always talk about people coming with a plan, like they have an agenda. And I'm never going to be the writing teacher that says, come and I'll show you an outline and in 300 lessons, you'll have your novel. I'm much more interested in people coming with really not know, like they might have a complete fixation about what it is they want to write. They want to write about a story about their mother or that keeps coming up, but they don't really know yet. They might know the situation, but they don't really know what the story is yet. And I
Mm.
think that's something you can't know until you're in the process. You
Hmm.
really can't know the story, until you're like walking on the bridge and building it at the same time. And I think that's a lot of how
And trusting that, yeah, it's something interesting is going to happen. Not trusting that you're going to finish the bridge the way you expect to. Maybe you
ever.
will, maybe you won't. But trusting that, you'll learn something and be curious about it.
And you're following that like need to sit down and do something. You're not sure why yet. We get ahead of ourselves, I think. And yeah, I think trusting is a huge part of it. And sometimes we think we trust, but then there's like a lot of control on that as a contingency. So it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So let's talk about your writing. So I
Yeah.
devoured your website,
Being
tracybleierpractice.com.
changed. Okay. Good. Great. Because it's 2 years old already. So now it's like it's totally relevant.
Ancient history. So reflective, insightful, nuanced, very open, non-judgmental, free. That's kind of the words that came to my mind. And I know we talked about this. In what way do you consider writing to be a spiritual practice? No different than, let's say, yoga or meditation or something like that.
Oh, I think that creativity is spiritual. So I think that to me, if you're born with a desire like to write or paint or dance or sing, that you're like the reciprocity, like you've been given a spark, you've been given a gift. And I think that to give back to life is to use that gift. So, and it doesn't mean that you're going to be a writer and you're going to be on Oprah and write a bestseller, but by making time to hone your craft that you love, whatever, I feel like something comes of that. Something you'll be able to listen, to life differently if you spend time like honoring your gift. And for me, I think that I never thought I could be a writer. I never, I always loved writing, but I didn't make it important. And I found work that allowed me to write kind of a little, but now this time the writing is really about creating a brave space to say this matters. And I don't have to know why yet, but just the act of it's like if you're a painter, you're going to the studio and you're working on, a canvas, and there's just something that's driving you to do it. And there's something nice about working on something without having an attachment to the outcome of it. And yet the discipline to really do it. It's not that different from getting to your mat. You're not trying to do a yoga practice to be in the Olympics, You're not trying to meditate to be a great meditator. So I think anytime we're just doing things that help us become better listeners, it's great. It's spiritual, like, because what could be better than listening um, to our lives,
Yeah,
to the world?
listening to yourself, listening to the world. Yeah, I taught a couple of classes on the topic of listening actually recently, and it's really hard. Yeah,
Isn't it
yeah.
so
I mean,
hard?
it's hard because I'd rather, it's, we all, everything's about talking and speaking, and there's courses about talking and speaking and how to craft something and how to say it and what organization. And it's great. Talking is very important, but there's very few courses, methodologies about listening. And there's one organization in particular that I'm very fond of called Compassionate Listening Project. They're up in
Mhm.
Washington, Seattle area. And I don't know if did we talk about this? I don't want
No,
to bore you. No,
no, I'm listening.
I'm kidding. And that's a reflection, by the way, when I say that I don't have enough trust in that what I'm saying is going to be interesting, by the way. So it's a note to self.
Yeah,
What
that's
these people do is they teach people how to listen, then they go into all these hot spots around the world. So Israel, Palestine, Bosnia, and they take people from both sides of the conflict and they put them in a room, they teach them how to listen. And then one person will talk to the other and tell them their story. My son was tortured in a jail. My son was this. My mother was killed. A bomb went off next to my house. My house was this, that, and then they hear the other side story. And what becomes very, very clear is that we're all the same. And because my story is your story.
yeah.
And all the walls drop. And then people become not only lifelong friends, but they start to understand better now how conflict is just totally ridiculous. So I've taken a little bit of work from their playbook about listening, and it's very, very hard because our egos are so big, and we're too busy talking and judging.
Very busy wanting to be heard first. Yeah, I know. Um, I think that, it's really interesting. There was like two thoughts that came to me around that listening being very, very hard. I think one was just in parenting, right? Because I think in that arena, it's I want for you what I want for you.
Right.
And I'm having a hard time listening to your wants, and because they rub up against like, right, whatever I'm all up against, because your success is a reflection of my success. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
successful parent. I think parenting is a great place to really hone that, is that it might be difficult. My oldest son went through a very difficult period. And I remember in moments of the end of like the deepest repair, he shared with me that what I chose for him to get well, he would, as much as he learned and gained insight and wisdom, he said he would never, ever want to go through it again, even though he gained so much.
Of course.
And it was a very difficult, and I could feel in my body a reflex to want to defend the reason I did it.
Mm.
And I stopped because I that wouldn't be listening. That would be saying, "Oh no, you're fine." It's like listening to the parent whose kid is screaming that they don't want to go to preschool, and they're like, "You love preschool," and that might be true, but in that moment, that's really negating, listening to the child, which is, it must be hard to be away from home. It must be, of course you want to be home. And I think that you're right. If we can just take that moment and go, am I really listening to this being in front of me, or am I just so concerned with protecting myself that I'm not listening? And I think that's a wonderful thing to continue to develop as a human and as an artist. um, in writing world, the second is the writing world is noisy, and it's getting less and less about quieting down. And like you said, you just stopped me and go, are you bored? You were, self-conscious and caught
Right.
up with my
Right.
response, right?
Right.
And we don't realize, like, I had an exercise where we had to take a walk and we had to come back and write. I work with a writing teacher. She's amazing. Her name is Alyssa Altman, and she's a memoirist, beautiful artist. And she said, come back and I want you to write 500 words that are just pure observation,
Mm-hmm.
with no assertion, no commentary, no metaphor, just observe. And it's amazing when we do that, because we think it needs to be more than what's right in front of us. What do I see? What's in my hands? What do I hear? And by doing so, you actually make in the writing, you make a connection to another body, because another body understands. But if we're constantly interrupting that with, and this is what I feel about it, and let me tell you how I feel about it, then that isn't listening anymore. That's just, I'm going to manipulate you, not consciously, because I want you to feel what I feel. And
I'm going to be judging and giving you a perspective. There's nothing, to some degree, there's nothing wrong with that. We do that all the time. But
well, all the
if you
time,
really,
right?
if you really want to get down to the essence of that issue or that matter, then you don't want to have that. You just want to observe.
Oh, it's so emancipating. It's like, can we just take ourselves off the hook and just write? It's so enough. It's enough to just listen to what's in front of you and not need to assert anything. It's wonderful, actually. It's really nice for people's nervous systems too to know that they are being heard, instead of being talked at. Um, my favorite meditation teacher is phenomenal because he doesn't believe, he used to be big in TM and he left that, this, that, but he's very big on, everybody has their own meditation, their spontaneous practices that are inherent inside of them. And he's really interested in, his whole work is listening, and then through the listening they uncover for themselves what their meditation practices are, rather than him saying, let me prescribe the one that I think you should be doing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that was revelatory for me. It's hard because we want to be told, tell me what to do.
Right.
I don't want the responsibility to know that I
Just give me
know.
the answer. Just give me the answer.
Give me the pill, give me the answer, right? Um and that goes back to like trusting that your body, your biology, the earth, it really knows how to bring you where you want to go. So it comes back to like, am I listening?
Yeah, what I have discovered, and I continue to discover it, is when I'm listening, I'm here in the moment. I'm not out. I'm not. Oh, well, Tracy said this. I got to respond this way, and yeah, let me tell this story today. It's like I'm not in the moment. I'm actually split. So you're only getting partial of my attention, and part of it, my mind is doing this, you know. But if I'm truly here in the moment, which is rare, I'll just be honest. I try, but it's just I know when I'm there, and I know not when I'm truly here in the moment. I don't have anything else going on. There's no talking. There's no conversation, and that's freedom. That's liberation, as far as I could see,
Mhm.
as far as I could feel.
And I
So,
know it's very mercurial,
it, it, it,
that I'm
yeah,
here and now I'm not. Yeah,
right,
I know.
right, right. But it's trainable,
It's a
and
100%.
yeah. So there's some hope. I have some hope for myself.
I'm
Uh,
hopeful.
so when you work with new students, even though they come to you for writing, I would also think that they have personal issues. We all do. Who doesn't have that? And I know that you're going to be that what you do is you help them with their writing, but obviously you're helping them with so much more. Do they see that? Do they understand that? Or do they just see that at the end of the road, like, oh my God, I can't believe she did this? Or do they see it right away? Or do they just help me with the writing?
Well, I mean, there's I think a lot of when I set out to create these spaces, I wasn't sure. My first inclination was just to create a space where people were accountable to it, because I think for writing, and not that different from meditation or asana practice. By the way, I think meditation is also yoga, but not just the poses. That's
Of
just
course.
you know so I thought I was just going to start with helping them have like a deadline, whatever, so that
Accountability.
they had,
Accountability.
yeah,
Yeah.
like they were showing up every day. This was a prompt, it generates some stuff, and they would get into the practice, of doing it. And the first few times I participated as a kind of, just as one of them, like I'm gonna be as vulnerable as you are. And what happened quickly was a willingness to, people want to share their stories. They want to share what is going on. They do. And one of the ways that happened was I put no stringent, you know, conditions on any of it. And I just the prompts themselves were really spacious. And I honestly don't know. It was a mystery. It kind of blew my mind the first few times that people were writing such profound experiences. And then it was through the practice, maybe there were 10 days, or we did it for a month every day. And there was at the end a kind of like, wow, I felt so safe. I felt so amazing, like you said, listening to those other stories in that compassion listening course. People were reading other people's stories from everywhere, and we're just so moved, that everybody was willing to say, wow, can you imagine if we were to meet people, and instead of just, hey, like this sort of, you know kind of superficial greeting, that we actually handed them a story, and we actually, and that's what it felt like. These strangers were just getting to know each other through their stories. And it was so infectious. And I was, gaining so much from that, and so kept them going. And then I got more interested in taking what was just free writing, and then let's take that and say, what's the difference between me writing in my journal and sharing things that happened, and then really crafting a story from
Hmm.
it. And then we look more at language and look more at slowing down. And I don't know, Marty, it's still a work in progress. To me, a lot of the culture are yoga teachers, or they have spiritual practices, and this is just one part of them, like that we share a passion for language, and for literature. And so it's really fun to be able to make space to learn about it more. That's all I want to do, is learn how to be as good as I can be, throughout my life. And whether that means the work's going to get out or other people's work is going to get out, amazing. But that's not necessarily why I'm driven to do it. I'm amazed at how good we become at something if we were to just keep focusing and learning. So I like just providing space to help people.
Well, it sounds like you're
Foster
providing
that more.
space, but you're
Mhm.
also listening. And I think by the act of listening, that empowers we'll call them the speaker, the writer. If you're listening to a writer because you're helping them, or they're even in conversation, or just by reading, that empowers people. It empowers you because you're in the moment, because you're truly listening. It empowers them because you're giving them full, complete, 100% attention.
Yeah.
So there's a trust together with spaciousness. They're set up for success, not success to write the best novel in the world, maybe, but success that they're going to walk away being empowered no differently than if you were a yoga teacher or a
Right.
meditation teacher, and they have this new skill that they can for themselves.
Right. To
So
lean
it's
on. Yeah. I mean, I've had students that went on to create writing groups for grief circles. They started to use writing in
wow.
different, in corporate, and creative writing avenues. And that's awesome, Um, and I
So
don't
so now,
know.
so now what's happening is you throw the pebble in the water, and the waves are now, it's like from you and the writer, and now all of a sudden it's the grief circle, and it's their families and it's their stories, and it's just like that's what it's
Exactly.
about.
I mean, and you said it, it's people's stories. Stories are what, to me, are what connect us, through ancestor, through our future, through our presence, through generations. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the story is, ah, story is the healing, and we're very, what is, Mitchell calls it, cancel. Mitchell's my husband. Cancel culture. We're
Right.
getting very trepidatious about what we can say.
Right.
um, but stories and poetry are one of those things where they don't have a doctrine necessarily. They're saying, this happened. This is a truth, that I want to share, and it's an invitation to to participate in it as a listener, not
Mhm.
as a, I agree with your story. The story doesn't ask you to agree or not
Right.
agree.
Right. Right.
Um, so
Let me redline. Let me take my red pen out here and show you where I
yeah.
agree and disagree.
It's amazing. Like, one of the things I do, I have only one condition because we give feedback, is I ask for no aesthetic bias. And, so, like, for example, if somebody's writing about women's soccer and you hate soccer, and you are going to say, like, I just don't like soccer, and I don't like the piece because of that, that's aesthetic bias. But if you can get through your own bias and say, what is the story here? Who's the voice? Who's telling
Right.
the story? Then you can have interest in anything. There was a memoir called H is for Hawk that came out a few years ago, and she won an award, Helen McDonald, and it's about falconry. And
Right.
I would never be interested in falconry,
Right.
but because of her writing and her passion and her voice, I was just absolutely riveted, and have a whole new etymology about falconry that I love. And it had nothing, I didn't need to know anything about, you know,
Right.
eating a hawk, so it's really interesting how we can be so, we can really get underneath our preferences through voice, through the power of voice, and that's a really lovely thing.
So, so true. So, so we talked about also our educational experiences that we had for ourselves and our kids, and we concluded that the educational system in this country is absolutely perfect and does not need any changes, I think. Isn't that what we decided? So we don't have to talk about it. No. So I think we concluded that it needs some help,
Yeah.
especially for kids who don't fit the mainstream mold.
Which are like a majority of our kids today.
Well,
Yeah.
when you think about it, no one really fits the mainstream mold. I don't even know. That's just like mainstream mold, but everyone's so unique and so special
That's true.
but obviously it works for some, doesn't work for others. Uh, I had some additional thoughts about that since that conversation, but I wanted to, do you want to share more about that,
Yeah.
about your thoughts on that?
About education and or
Sure,
special needs.
sure. Because my thoughts have changed since we spoke last. So,
Yeah. I think you said it right, and I don't think it's for everybody. And sadly, I think technology has evolved, and we do amazing things. And to me, public education, I think looks the same in a lot of places. I think there's some real exceptions and some amazing teachers, but I'm not even going to get into it too deeply, but in my personal experience, public education was, I use the term soul crushing for
right.
each one of my kids. I have three boys individually. I have a middle that's more mainstream, one that is definitely more alternative, and my youngest has Asperger's. And so, being in a very loud, very big public school situation, and then just going in there and trying to say, he really needs help, like integrating on a playground, he's fine in the classroom, and just all the subtle ways that a school is just not equipped to support a child's system to integrate socially. Or in his case, he had his own way of coping. And what he would do is that as he got older, he'd come home and he'd just say, he was just so afraid, because what he'd say is like, I always feel like I'm going to do something wrong and get in trouble. And he's the sweetest, most rule following kid in the world. And but the fear that was instilled in him, because if he dropped his pencil or he did run down the hallway, or there was just like, and he said the most interesting thing. He came home and he goes, I don't understand why you have to line up before we walk in anywhere. Like, who does that? Like, do we adults have to stand outside and line up before we walk in a building? So he just felt like all of these rules that he's very literal just felt so scary to him, because that wasn't the way that life was outside. So, I think some people thrive in those cultures, and they're like, that book, The Dandelion and
Hmm.
the Orchid.
Yeah. Hmm.
And some kids can just flourish anywhere. And some, they need very particular conditions
Hmm.
to flourish. And for me, finding that culture is really important, having gone through it and really struggled. And then this time with my third, we were like, okay, like this isn't working. Instead of, you need to tough it out. I mean, I don't believe in that. I don't believe they need to tough it out. Why? Um, I don't, I think there are enough challenges that children get as they grow up that will help them gain resilience. I don't think subscribing to a culture that's fear based, is going to, if anything, I think it was going to just build more anxiety for him, that he can't really be who he is. So soul crushing is that thing where you
Hmm.
don't feel free to be who you are. You don't feel, so yeah, there's a really cool, I don't remember where, but there was, it was a podcast, and I don't remember who said it, but it was around when he was diagnosed. Um, they don't call it Asperger's anymore. They call it like social pragmatic communication disorder.
Ah,
That's like
much nicer word.
the DSM thing. And one of the things they talked about with kids on the spectrum was, you know, I feel like the line was something like, I don't need to change to make you feel better about yourself. And that really stuck with me. And my youngest teaches me so much because he is so literal. And he doesn't often understand why people are sarcastic. Like, sarcasm is not in his consciousness. He's learning now. He's 13, and when he is sarcastic, we're like, that was funny, And but it's not something that he, I don't know. He doesn't get why people would like cut each other down just for fun, and it's kind of beautiful. It's very beautiful. It's not kind of beautiful because he's so pure, in his mind. Socially, it's just, he's still so innocent. And I would like to culture that more and celebrate that more instead
Mhm.
of like, you're not cool. We always have
Yeah,
that.
instead of hide it or suppress it. Yeah. So, when you talk about education and your experience, and I think about my son's experience and I think about my experience, I get very angry
Yeah.
because kids can't stand up for themselves, not with adults. It's very difficult.
Terrifying.
First
Yeah.
grade, second grade, third grade. And and I remember when I was in school, because I said to myself, why did I have such a bad experience? Why am I so anti that school? I changed religions. I'm now a Buddhist for 40 years. And and I took a hard look back at it and I said, uh, here's what it came down to. Some teachers were kind
Right.
and listened, and some teachers were mean and effing cruel.
It's true.
And and or just not noticing when someone is needs help. I am not saying, hey, let's spoil all the kids. We got to spoil them, spoil them, spoil them, keep them happy, do whatever. No, of course not. Of course not. But so that was the experience I grew up with. To some degree, my son had a similar experience in a way that they didn't really listen to what and his parents, myself, didn't listen as well as we could have. So if you're not listening and you're not kind, and you should not be in the teaching profession. But that's kind of, and when I see that now, I just get very angry about it because it doesn't have to be that way, and it's, in my mind, it's a form of abuse.
So we play this game Apples to Apples with my son, and do you ever play it? It's like
No, no, I don't know.
so it's a great game, and so you have an adjective, and then you have a variety of different cards that could be like, my parents, the universe, the ocean, cabbage, and there's always an adjective, and you have to vote for in your deck what you think is closest to this adjective. So the word was dull. That was the adjective. And my son, we're all three of us are playing, and he puts down teachers. And I was so sad, because at the end of the day, like that was his experience. Like,
Right.
and I was a high school English teacher, before I was
Huh.
a yoga
Okay.
teacher.
Forgot that.
And I went into teaching because I loved the exchange of being able to take something like literature and say, how can I make this exciting to a teenager? Um, but the larger experience, and it was a soul crushing job, only not because of the kids but because of the system, because I ended up no longer teaching the books I wanted to teach, but I had to teach like the standardized test stuff all the time. I had to cut off our curriculum so that I can teach them how to take a test so that we can maintain our blue ribbon status. And if I didn't get my kids prepared for that test, it reflected on my teaching. So I left. Eventually, I couldn't do it anymore. I was like, so that's a whole other aspect of education that's getting worse because it's now so political. But yeah, like it's really brave that your son, I know, like came home and said, I can't do this. It's brave when we come home and say, I
Yeah.
can't
He
do
didn't
this.
say I can't do this. He said I won't do this.
I won't do this. And you know what? That's even like kudos to him, because I think any age, especially like you said, to just come home and everyone else around him is doing it. And he says, I won't. It's really brave. Like that's heroic,
Yeah.
And for a parent to go, oh, it's terrifying. What is that going to look like then? But saying, okay, you're going to own that, is the best thing you could do. But it's tough, it's hard to say, like, what does our kids' future look like without following the same path that we did, and look what we do. You ended up becoming a Buddha. Like all these things ended up to unraveling, in your adult life, because we had so much that we followed as younger people.
So, normally I ask questions in the
Mhm.
podcast, like, can you share personal difficulties that you were able to overcome with your spiritual practice? And I'm not going to ask the question because what you imbue is you imbue the spiritual practice.
Mm.
This is not like, some people, I'm on the cushion, that's my spiritual practice, and now I go about my day doing whatever I do. But your day is filled with that constant curiosity, checking in with yourself. Let's see if I could do this in a skillful, kind way. So I'm going to skip that question. Is that okay?
Okay, that's fine. I have many, but the Thomas Merton quote. You don't know if when you're on the spiritual path, when you're awake, you don't know the difference between when you fall and when you rise.
There you go. Wow.
So,
Okay, I'm going to have to use that one.
yeah, I mean, I can't say I'm always in like, oh, thank God for this deep, intense, fucked up period of my life.
Right.
But I could say that a lot of it is company, like I have a really, my husband and I are really um, devoted to working on our own respective, awakening, for
Wow.
lack of a better word.
So you get that support and you get that synchronicity and you get that integration, and that's very
That's
powerful.
everything.
So
Yeah.
that's a big support for both of you.
That is a huge support.
Yeah.
And that's alignment. To
Right.
me, that doesn't mean we're always in agreement, but we definitely are in alignment a lot of the
Right.
time.
Right.
So yeah, but for sure, if whoever's listening, if there is challenges, we all have them. There's no immunity. I think people come to yoga practice and think it's like a crisis management thing, or it's a spiritual fantasy to think you're not going to have stress, or you're not going to be angry, or you're not going to, curse or eat Pop Tarts or whatever you think you're going to do. It's not, to me, it's not about sanitizing your life. It's just giving you more tools to say, I have choice in the matter, even if things are unexpected. And some things are unexpected, are really take years to recover from. Traumas are real. That's why I think when you were saying, moving your body and doing karate or doing asana or doing breathing or doing things that really help dislodge the traumas that we don't want to continue to cycle through and get activated every time.
Yeah,
So
it's a
that
it's
happens.
we're changing our habit. We're trying to break a habit. A
Yeah,
habit is something happened or a thought came into my mind, and now I'm angry or annoyed or fearful about something related to something else. Well, that's a habit. So how are we going to break that? We have to break that when the thought comes in, I don't have to feel that way. And then eventually you break it so that the thought doesn't even come in anymore because there's no power to the thought.
right.
But like you said, it could take not just days and weeks and months, it could take years.
Years,
But
but it's
over
worth it.
time, it's worth it.
It's
It's
worth
absolutely,
it. It's worth it.
yeah.
It's worth it because it happens. You all of a sudden look back and you're like, Jesus, like you know, I would have been I would have reacted so differently, 5 years ago. I'm amazed at the growth. I'm amazed at that, that development. It does work, it's amazing.
Yeah, it works. That's the bottom line. So that's why I do it. If it didn't work, I go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, okay. So skipping the challenge question. Okay.
yeah, well, you've answered it by just being here, by just speaking. So, you used to, do you still teach yoga or
So
what's,
I do teach yoga practice. I have when the pandemic hit, I stopped teaching in studio
right, of
classes,
course.
and I did a live stream weekly thing with my husband,
Okay,
which was
great.
super fun. We got to uh, teach each other. We would alternate, and we still do that once a week. It's once a week, so that's really the only public
Hmm.
class that we play with and evolve, and it's super fun, and it
Good.
incorporates everything we love. So he
Hmm.
teaches meditation, or he teaches nervous, somatics and
Great.
asana and,
Okay, good.
strength. And then I teach privates, and most of the privates I have are elder couples, or just looking to maintain good postural health. I don't teach asana anymore. I appreciate a good workout, but for me, it's really about it's just about stabilizing our systems and being curious, because I think I used to teach very rigorous, very, very difficult poses. And I don't know, my interest waned, and I found that I was no longer, for me, I asked myself, is this taking good care of myself? And I was injured a lot of the time and expected to come to the mat and think that was somehow going to be curative. And it was just punishing. So I had to reevaluate what I was actually doing with my body and why. And so that was a whole other course in leaving the traditional asana and leaving the systems and really figuring out what gave me, what gave me pleasure, what was hydrating, how did I want to move? And that involved many different kinds of things. And now that's the kind of thing I teach. And I'm not unlike my meditation teacher. I really like to listen to what people are doing intuitively and then incorporate that in some way, because I think people also know how they like to move, and they don't really need to be taught that much about how to jump or pull or push. They just need to, a little container, some navigation points, and it's easy. So
Yeah,
I am teaching a little bit,
great.
but not
Uh,
as not as much as I used to.
I'm glad you are. What I'm also hearing or feeling is that you're able to connect more with your students in those more one-on-one, one-on-two situations than you were
Love that.
in a studio. Nothing wrong with studios, of course, in a studio with a large group of people, and you can connect there too. But it's a little bit harder. It's a little bit more, I got my megaphone. Okay, this is what we're doing, everyone. As
Oh,
opposed
so
to
true.
here, it's more of a connection, is what I'm thinking.
I agree. I mean, I think I used to be really attached to that because I had a studio for like 15 years, and
I
I
remember.
was really attached to being the popular yoga class teacher. And it's very seductive. And when I came to Chicago, I mean, having built a very popular yoga studio in Connecticut, I literally thought I was going to come here and like they were going to like roll out there, like, oh my God, Tracy Bleier is teaching, and I was a nobody. And so showing up to like 3 people when I used to have like 40 people in class, was like, it was so humbling. And I was like, Jesus, I was so attached to that popularity that I really also had to reevaluate. That took a while of like, and I thought what I taught was so great, and you come to Chicago and they like different things. And so it's not about you and your teaching, it's not about me, it's about whatever exchanges, like you said, are going on. And the less I can not make it about me, the more wonderful it is. But I think I had been for a while, like, oh, like at the end of the class, like, you know, how much did you like that? Like needing that validation or something, like puppy dogs, like tell me how great I am.
Right.
Um, but now I enjoy it quieter, simpler, connecting, and not really, we can talk about the yoga world, but Instagram really changed that. I mean, we talked about it. Like people aren't going. I appreciate that yoga's done so much for people, but it's weird to go into a class with someone who's 22 and teaching some practice. I don't know. It's like, what do okay, we're teaching exercise, but is there wisdom being dispensed? Maybe, I don't know. But it took me a
Well,
while to just say, like, it's not going to be for me. I don't want to compete with that. It's just not yeah.
she's reading
Anyway,
a
that's
quote.
another
She's
podcast.
reading a quote from a book, so I think there is spirituality there.
All right.
So I don't think we talked about this, but I study Iyengar now, and
Yeah, Elizabeth told me.
and
Awesome.
the Iyengar instructors. I mean, I think you probably have several
Many of them.
certifications, and I have a few certifications as well. And one certification was like a year, another one was like 6 months, and now I can probably get on a certification on the internet after about 3 or 4 hours, get my yoga certification. But
Yeah.
but I,
Go to
the
Mexico for a
right,
weekend and get
bing,
it.
I'm done, I'm good. But the Iyengar instructors, they have to go through years and years and years and all kinds of tests, and it's just, I mean, whether you like that particular type of style or not, that's another story. I happen to like it, but it's a very rigorous training, and very rigorous training, not just in physical and not just biological, but also spiritual and what Mr.
Yeah.
Iyengar's teachings and Patanjali's teachings, blah blah blah. So I'm not pushing Iyengar, but that's But when you go there, you can feel, you can know that you're not going to get injured, and you know that these people are serious about their teaching, as opposed to, not that there's anything wrong with a 21, 22-year-old teacher at all, but the very quick way that people are certified and the focus and emphasis on, you know, on will I be teaching a good class, and are you sweating enough, and is it hot enough, and are you moving fast enough, is not, you know, is not where it's at.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole big conversation. We taught a very specific system. It was based a lot on Iyengar, and it was very systematized. And there were a lot of people that were injured, including me. And I think that, one of my favorite movement teachers, her studies were with two completely opposing philosophies about the body, and
Right.
she loved them both. And I think that it's beautiful when you find a practice that you jive with, and you jive with it. It's another thing if, for me, systems that tell me that I'm going to do this and it's going to get that and then this. I think it allows you to be curious about it, but I think if it becomes so achievement oriented that I have to get everything right,
Mm-hmm.
I I think that could be
Absolutely.
I think that could be injurious. I think that can be helpful. And then I think we have to always remember that can create its own dogmatic mentality. Like, this is the only way to practice yoga. So
Yep.
I'm not going to say that, the young, popular Instagram aren't, for them, it's divine. It's amazing. It's lit them up. And I'm not going to say that the Iyengar teachers too have, the secret of, yoga. I'm going to say that find the one, the Buddha said that there's 70,000 practices, try them all and find the one that works for you.
Right. Right. Right.
And,
Right. Right.
I'm going to add and be willing to know that'll change. And I think that that's the part where you're like, this is no longer, I don't even know how you assess if it isn't working for you anymore. But I think for me in the writing process, it's like, there's just a dullness. There isn't, it's almost become obligatory, and it's not creating that
It's not fun.
lightness,
It's not fun.
yeah. And it
Right.
should, it's
Right.
okay.
There's got to be, yeah,
And hard
absolutely.
for, yeah. So I think I get worried about systems, because what I see being in the yoga world for long is that again, there's no listening. There's a lot of trying to convert or evangelize people into this is the best way. And
It's
I
the only way. It's
participated
the
in
only
that.
way. This is the only way.
Only way.
Yeah.
This is the philosophy. This is the technique. This is how I'm going to tell you to move your body.
Right.
And there's
Right.
everything
Right.
else sucks.
Right.
And I don't know how that's furthering, to me, yeah, I think it's beautiful to be curious about it. But if we can't be in conversation and have different opinions and different experiences, and see the value of that and be comfortable talking about our differences, then I don't really know what it's perpetuating, other than just more division and competition
Right.
and
More dogma.
ego. Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, Mitchell has a lot to say about that, because he's had some very strong male teachers, and it took him a while to really like unravel that dogmatic thing, like that instead of like holding space, it's like you're just like occupying space with someone. And I think learning just to allow people that they're capable, to find, their alignment, as they learn, and not try to hit every note. But I don't know. That's like a learning style too. So I'm certainly not knocking. Iyengar's a brilliant system, and we just want to know that there's also one of so many. There's so much brilliance happening, and yoga is
Mm,
constantly a
yeah.
technology that's constantly changing. It's amazing.
Yeah. No, well, very well said. And I agree 100%. Unfortunately, not to talk too much about Iyengar, but the best Iyengar teachers are the ones that are open to other possibilities, and not just this is it, there's no other way, one way or the highway type of thing. So, but
I think so
I
too.
agree with you 100%. I had my own experience where I was like just grinding away like the hamster on the treadmill. I was
Right.
doing that in my karate practice. I was doing that in my
Right.
climbing practice. And I just said, hey, this ain't fun anymore. Not only is it not fun, it's very stressful, it's very fearful, very anxiety provoking. Before I would go climbing, and it's like, yeah, after you did the climb or after you did the practice, you felt great, but you shouldn't live 30, 40% of your life in anxiety about what was coming up to see if you could achieve it. I was just on that treadmill and I got off and I said, hey, I'm not going to do this unless this is fun. Not that everything has to be fun,
No,
but
but
there's
that's
got to be some aspect of joy. It's going to be hard
why
work.
not?
There's going to be a
Why
little
not?
stress, but
Right.
absolutely. But
Yeah.
there's got to be something there that's joy. Otherwise, you're just hurting yourself. You're just crushing
Right.
yourself.
Right. In a certain way, you're participating in that. I
Right.
should do this, instead of like, do I want to?
Right.
And some things we don't have the say so, but how we choose to move our body, we do. And if there's an idea that there's the promised land after you get X amount of poses, or you're not going to feel difficult things, then that's I call that spiritual fantasizing. That's not what this is about. And I think
That's
only you.
Hollywood. That's a Hollywood thing, I think.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, and only you know why you're getting on a mat, or why you're going to a blank screen, and why you're going to a cushion or dancing. You're the only one who really knows why you're meeting yourself there. And I think that's a really honest assessment of saying, like, it was punishing, and I had that same experience. I had to step away from it for a while, and even now with exercise, I'm I walk my dog. I if I want to do something, I will. I'm not. I would like to take that heavy pressure that I think I've normalized, that I must do this. I would like to know what life is without that voice, because it would be nice to take ourselves off the hook sometimes and say, why can't joy or pleasure? We're so focused on our suffering, but why can't we use that as a benchmark for making decisions? And then that isn't spiritual fantasy. That's tough, because then you're
Mhm.
saying, like, you actually deserve that, that you can build a life. And that's, to me, really interesting. It's really interesting to build your life around, does this contribute to abundance? Does this give me pleasure? And if the answer is no, and you have choice in it, I don't know. For me right now, that's where I'm looking at my work. And it's hard as the country's opening. Um, the pressure to go back. And I've seen this
Get
year,
back to work.
right. And I find that very jarring, because there's so much that there was a lot of suffering and a lot of pain and a lot of fear and chaos, for sure. But there was also, it's like my meditation teacher said, it's amazing. The whole world is on a retreat, and you've been on many retreats. They're not easy.
All right.
They're boring, they're monotonous, they're terrifying, they're uncomfortable, and they're beautiful, because we get a chance to slow down and say, how am I using my time? Now that I have some more than I ever have at home with my family, can I even be here? And if many people are struggling, they have to get their yoga class, but they can't. Well, how healthy is that? What is the yoga doing then? It's just creating addiction. It's like, can we just be home and, have a simpler way of being? And I think that was really, it's jarring when those of us that have found a beautiful opportunity to use time differently, to go up, now that's over, you got to go back.
Right.
No, thank you.
Right.
I'm good.
Well, I think it comes from the no pain, no gain culture.
Yeah,
And
that's terrible.
it's horrible. But at some point, we all, the American, the Western culture, not so much the Eastern culture, but that's what we bought into. No pain, no gain. And that's a
Boot
fallacy.
camp,
It's a
right.
fallacy. Boot camp, yeah. Um, Good pain, as opposed to like, yeah, pain's going
Yeah,
to be
it's
part of life
certainly
and
like,
stress is going to be part of life, but it doesn't mean we have to uh, bang my head against the wall over and over and over again and think that that's good. If we want to put ourselves into a little bit of stress because you enjoy the activity, climbing is a good example of that. There's
yeah,
fun, there's joy, there's some stress, there's some risk, but you do it because you like the way that it's like dancing on mountain, dancing on rock.
yeah,
So, because you like to dance, great. But, there's going to be some stress there because you're high up off the ground. And, if you don't do things just right, you could get hurt. So that to me works. But the other way of just let's go to the mat because it's Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays and it's 7:30 in the morning, bing, bang, boom, no matter how you feel, that doesn't
And
really,
then just, yeah, and then thinking about that, it's a generalization, but the person that's sitting at the office for, you know, 15 hours, and then they run home and they go to their class, their Peloton. It's like, we have so little, or I feel like it's hard to say, what would it be like if I gave myself time not to run to class? Can I just, what's going to happen? What are we afraid of
what's going to
when
happen?
we're,
That's the
yeah,
question. That's the fear.
yeah,
What's going to happen?
I
I'm going to miss a day, or I'm not going to do
know,
my hour on the
exactly.
bike.
I
What's
know,
going to happen?
I know.
Now, what's interesting is the mind is very tricksterish because what's going to happen is you're going to fail. That's what we think. What's going to happen is you're not going to feel good. You're going to gain weight. You're going to not look good. You're not going to feel good. Blah 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 blah. And I think also it's deceptive because when we are finished working out, yoga class, climbing, dancing, whatever, we do feel clear. But now what's happened is some people have taken that to the extreme, which is after some hot yoga, not all, some hot yoga, you think you feel clear, but you're actually drowsy.
Right. You're
So
kind of
and but you
depleted.
think you think you're high, but you're really just wasted,
Right.
and we confuse the two. Not all hot yoga is like that, but some is. So it's such a slippery slope because after we do run a 20, 30, 40, 50 mile ultra marathon, we do feel better. Because why? Because I've stopped hitting my head against the wall 200,000 times. Of course, it's going to feel better. But, there are other ways to do it that are more productive, more love oriented, love and compassion for oneself, have some joy. And yeah, there's some stress. And yeah, I'm going to get a good workout. And yeah, I'm going to feel clear afterwards, not just physically clear, but mentally clear.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of a good yoga class, a good dance class, a great writing class is you might be physically tired, but you are clear.
I think there is an emphasis on, what we define as productive. So, for example, I love, the artist's way and a lot, the morning pages, and you write 3 pages every day, indefinitely in the prompts, and it's beautiful. It's life changing, incredible. But I think anything that says to you, or like Vipassana meditation, you need to sit in the morning, you need to sit at night, every day, going to the gym, this is your routine, run, whatever. I think that the body actually doesn't need that much time to, create that, like you said, that clarity, that kind of pump or that endorphin. I think that we might have bought into the idea that we have to do so much in order to produce an effect that we want. And the
And more is
experiment,
and more is better.
more is
We're
better.
also
And
under the belief that more is
right,
better.
right. And honestly, the experiment I've been under the last couple of years has been, what would it be like to do less and actually just be more efficient? So if I take 20 minutes, or I decide to walk, or, and honestly, the truth is, unless you are like avid and passionate about, like you are with rock climbing, and you want to spend your time like getting better and you love it. I don't know how many people would say to you, like, would you rather just like go for a walk, or would you rather go to the gym with the loud music, and like pump iron, like
Right.
really, like if I said to you that would have the same outcome, would you go to the gym as much as you do, or would you like allow yourself the opportunity to just have more leisure? Or I actually think of leisure no longer, because I think of that as being like on the couch, but
Right.
just take more pleasure in other active things that don't necessarily have to produce this outcome that you, like you said, you need that drowsy or endorphin high. Can you just be in the middle, because I think our bodies don't need more. We're just so good at adapting to more, and
But the mind, but I
that's
think
the
that,
last few,
but I think the mind plays games with
especially
us.
if you've been under stress. Like if you've had a stressful like year, and you're punishing yourself by getting on your bike, or thinking that's going to, what would, for me, it's like, God, I've been exhausted this month. I'm going to rest more.
Right.
I'm going to look at how I'm sleeping. or what kind of water I'm drinking, or, am I having sex every day? Like, if I always say to people, like, if you're going to gym every day, but you're not having sex at all, like, I don't know. I mean, that's another conversation, but
Sure. But I think the mind, once again, we bought into the no pain, no gain.
right.
So if I've only done 20 minutes of yoga, that's not an hour. I don't know if that's going to count. I don't know what it's accounting for, but
Which is
that's what we
so
tell.
funny. I know.
So, and maybe an hour is good. Maybe you need 3 hours. Maybe once in a while, sure, let's go climb for 4 days in a row, be exhausted, come home. Yeah, okay, once in a while, sure, no problem. But if we're doing it, and it's akin to banging our head against the wall, not good, not healthy, but we have to believe that and understand that. And especially when I was younger, I didn't. I just knew I had to go,
Well,
routinized.
it's like your son coming home and saying, "I won't do this anymore."
Right,
It's like
right.
really brave to say, to challenge what you've already always known and told this is what you need.
Yeah,
So it's like really scary to be like, you know what? Like, I don't know if I need to do this anymore. It's not, I don't want to. So what am I going to do now? What is that going to look like? Am I going to get fat, or, what am I afraid of if I start to change it
right,
up?
right.
Um,
Takes
that's
courage. It
interesting
takes
to me.
courage.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things I do notice in the writing group is a ton of beating themselves up, a ton of
Mm,
self
I
criticism.
bet.
Like, no one is willing to just be like, not without a disclaimer, not without some
Right,
way to put themselves down,
right.
and that's so sad. I mean, I'm guilty of it just as much. I mean, one of the things I've learned, and we talked about it with like plant medicines, is the amount of criticism that I like walk around with, or the judgments that I have about you know, my anything, and
Right.
like, like, this is a year of like pivoting, this is a year of figuring
Right.
out that we might have a new way we want to live. And so we might not know 100%, but can I hang out in that instead of, beating myself up that I have to figure it out right this second? Because that's really stressful,
Hmm.
you
For
know?
sure.
So
Very good. No, wonderful. So let's talk about a couple more questions. Then we've gone on.
way longer.
Love
Thank
it.
you,
I
Jonah,
love
for
it. Love
editing
it.
this.
Love every minute of it. So, you're off the cushion, you're walking around, you're about your day, and something triggers you, and you get angry or irritated or annoyed. Do you have a technique that you use or something that you do so that once you notice it, that you are less angry or less irritated or less annoyed?
Presently, I have come to track it more. So I've been working with a woman who does a lot of somatic therapy. And
Okay.
so one thing that she's really helped me is just to really provide language for the source. Where am I feeling this? What is it feeling like? And then I used to have a proclivity to want to talk about it right away.
Hmm.
And in the last few months, like really presently, I'm going back to the curiosity. I'm more, I'm like holding my chest because I talk about it as a flutter. Like, if I get activated, I'm like a flutter, and I feel like I want to grab for, I want to either create a fight or conflict or take myself up and out.
Hmm.
And so the somatic experience, it could be a breath, it could be a hand gesture, it could just be, a question I might ask, like, what is it about this that I'm having trouble tolerating? And what can I tolerate? And if I'm fortunate and I have like my husband or my best friend around, I can in time speak to it, and say, wow, I'm feeling really uncomfortable about that exchange, or I'm feeling, and really name it. And then the practice can just come from, once I name it, they say name it to tame it.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
Yeah, I think that just somatically understanding that there's a visceral response in the body, and instead of immediately letting it go right to my reaction, it's just letting it synthesize. Often it passes, but it also gives me a pause to say, it gives me a pause in a time where I never paused, and now I think I'm more interested in pausing and understanding where my tolerance lives when I'm activated. So I would say somatic based response is
Hmm.
really where, and I think, yoga is very somatic. I don't grab my mat and move my body, but I used to.
Hmm.
And, I might take a few breaths. I might read poetry, I might listen to music, but mostly for me, I'm a big verbal person. So I think I process things out loud. And I sometimes think I need to do that when I'm feeling something.
Hmm.
I just right now don't do it immediately. I'll like
Hmm.
take a moment and then I'll say, you know what? Like, I just recognize that something just happened. It really affected me. And, and sometimes it's just asking for help, like I need help with this feeling I'm having.
Hmm.
I'm fortunate to have skilled people to help me and I trust them. But yeah, but pausing, tracking the actual life cycle of when you get activated, what happened, where is it in my body? Um,
Beautiful. So I love that for so many reasons. One is you're breaking the cycle. You're breaking the habits simply by just stopping.
right,
So you're breaking that habit of being triggered and reacting, triggered,
right,
50,000 times a day, every single day.
right,
Someone says something to you wrong, inappropriate, rude, or a thought pops into your mind about the future, the pet, trigger, reaction, trigger. So you're breaking that habit. Love that. Then
yeah,
you're also checking your body. Where do I feel it? Maybe the heart fluttering or a stress or whatever. I don't see anything wrong if you can, not you, but if people can. Yeah, oh, there's a yoga mat. Let me go do some asanas.
nothing
That'll,
wrong with that.
if you
Amazing.
can. But I'm at the office. I can't do that. Or I'm on
Right.
the phone. Just can't do that. So what you do, and then you start tracking it back. Where did it come from? Where did it come from? How did that work? So all these things are just phenomenal, and they're subtle, but they're so powerful in the long run. Subtle meaning it's not like all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm better. But subtle in that they're slight, it helps to dissipate and soothe and break up whatever it is that kind of popped in and breaks the habit. And then in the long run, those things don't pop in as much anymore, or they don't have as much power anymore.
Right. You don't start creating a story around it, which is, I think, what I used to do a lot is it
The,
just would, the
the
physical
story.
reaction would create like a mental narrative. And that narrative would just make me, that's what I was reacting to, which wasn't even real. And
Wow.
I saw so much of that for years functioning
Wow.
so obsessively. And I've learned in time, we are addicted to our trauma response. We actually have an addiction to it. And if you're a storyteller like me, I love my stories. I'm addicted to talking about them all the time. I write about them. So it's been a very wonderful maturing to go, is that again, back to like, is this a contributing to abundance? Is this growth? And even in my marriage, it was very stressful because I was so, anxious if something would, I was so thrown off guard. And I'm now like, that's really interesting. Every time that happens, this happens in my belly, and this happens. And I'm not gonna add more harm to myself by creating a cause, assigning a reason I have that. But now, right, you have power in that. You have say so over how you want to move your nervous system. I mean, again, this is all nervous system stuff. The
Hmm.
yogis were so smart because I think that's what they ultimately were talking about is not having a flexible hamstrings, but having a flexible nervous system to go like I can be sovereign over my nervous system. And when you are, you're great. It's amazing if you could
Hmm.
do that. That's
Yeah.
well worth your time.
Yeah. I don't have to feel that way.
I don't have to feel that way.
Right.
Back to just you're allowed not to like you're allowed to feel joy. It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to continue the habit, the
Right.
cycle. You don't have to, or you don't have to believe your own PR. I
Oh,
mean,
that's a great quote. Yeah.
the stories we tell ourselves
Awesome.
over and over and over again, we don't even realize we're telling it. So, from a Buddhist perspective, when we do that, that is grasping, a form of grasping, and it's a form of building and creating or supporting the self, our identity. And the stronger that is, the stronger we hold on to it, it's negative karma.
Right.
And how we can prove that is when something comes along, like someone telling me or some type of resistance, the greater the reaction is, it means that the stronger the grasping and holding on to who we think we are, the self. And from a Buddhist perspective, the self doesn't exist the way we think it does. We think we know who the self is, but it's constantly changing. But the quieter we can be, the fewer the stories, the greater the positive karma, the less harm, the more open we are, the more liberation and freedom, as opposed to this is who I am, a great person, great businessman, yogi, father, the thousands of stories. And then anytime someone pokes a little bit of a hole in it, the resistance pops, the trigger pops, the reaction pops. That's how you know that, okay, ego, self identity, it's a story. Resistance, don't need that. Got to break the habit. Got to break the habit.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
I love the way you work with your mind, your body to break the habit. So who I think this is my last question. Who are some of your heroes, alive or dead?
Oh my God, I hate these questions. What's your favorite movie? My heroes, alive or dead.
One or two, anyone.
Um, the poets,
Okay,
all of them.
all of them. Okay,
Um, mm, you know, I'm.
I'll
It's
go.
funny. I'm holding back, but I want to say, I want to say my children.
Okay,
Seems so
great.
cliche, but they are. I mean, and each one of them in their own way has confounded me, kicked my ass, and made me like a better woman. Um, I want to say, I don't subscribe to like a guru or anything, so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So I don't have one teacher, but I'd say that the circle of women in my life, um, from older to maybe 10 years younger, I have a small circle of women that I are quite heroic, and have been tremendous. Presences in my life right now. So I think about that close circle that has done nothing but stay and remind me of who I am. They're my heroes, and the things that they're doing with their life are, you know, just so inspiring. And of course, my husband.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, my
Good.
husband. So it's the close knit. But I'm gonna say the poets are my first, and every
Okay.
one of them. I have books and books, and yeah, I'm a big fan of having, read a poem every single day. Read a poem before you go into a difficult conversation. You know, they're all, they're amazing.
Opening your mind.
Yeah, there's a writer right now, that has his name is Ocean Vuong, and
Hmm.
he's a poet. He wrote just his first novel, and there's an amazing talk. If anyone is listening, he has a talk on being, that literally stopped me in my tracks and talked about the generative power of words and language.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and English was not his first language, and he went on to win the National Book Award last
Wow.
year. No, I know, it's like amazing. And so I'm thinking about him. I'm thinking about those voices that were so brave to just speak the frickin' truth
Hmm.
and ask the hard questions. Those are my heroes.
Well, what's beautiful about that for me is just a sense of gratitude
Mm.
that we have for these people. We're not out there as like, hey, look at me, it's all about me, and look what I can do. It's like, no, we're a community of people that help each other, support each other,
Ugh,
love each other, and that's those are all the people you named. So
yeah,
I'm
really,
glad
I
you
am
did.
really grateful. I'm really grateful. And I'm sure if you look at your path, Marty, you would look at your circles and how much they have
Mhm.
changed, how much you've had people come into your life at that time, and maybe they weren't the easiest. And I feel like the older I get, the more, it's not discernment. It's just that the more, maybe it is discernment. It's saying like, who do I really want to bring in this close? And there is no necessity to have you know, many people that I have to, I think it's okay, and I think as an extroverted person as I am, I think I've come to really feel more comfortable in smaller circles.
Mhm.
and more enduring in that way. And they're not expecting me to, you know, please them. They're good with themselves, so we can have a really healthy friendships
Mm-hmm.
and healthy
Mm-hmm.
relationships. I
Right.
don't think that's always been the case, for me. Being, a teacher is always being a helper. You want to please,
Right, 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 right. You want
and
to please and you want to be pleased, and
you
it's
want to manage exactly. And
a
I'm,
little
I'm
transactional,
right.
and a little
And you
always
attract that. You attract then those
right,
projects,
right.
and I'm pretty sensitive now to. It's okay. Boundaries arise out of, I think, needs, and the need right now is to not get distracted by having, taking myself up and out to manage somebody else's stuff. Like, that's not mine. And that's been really beautiful, healthy, help and transformative.
So what I've loved about talking with you is, one is I learned a lot. And so that's actually why I do the podcast. It's very selfish. I get to learn.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
beautiful.
but I
That's
think
a great reason.
more importantly is I think people that are listening or watch this it's gonna help them. So that to me is unbelievable that we or you are able to do that. So this has been wonderful.
You're amazing.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience, and it's great catching up with you. So I'm going to touch base with you in about 20, 25 years. We'll do this every 20,
Yeah, we'll do
25.
this every decade. Okay. No, I'm going to reach out to you and Elizabeth, and
Okay,
I want to catch up.
absolutely,
I want to
for
hear.
sure.
I think this is beautiful. I'm so glad you are. That's a wonderful reason to help people and to learn. I can't think of two better
Great.
things in the world.
Thank you, and hi to your husband, Mitchell. I'll be
Yeah.
in touch with him. All right, be well. Enjoy the day.
Bye.
Stay
Thank you,
safe.
Mordy.
I hope you enjoyed our talk with Tracy Bleier. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the It's Not What You Think podcast. That really helps us to continue to produce these episodes and invite other guests from around the world. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or would like to hear any specific guests on the podcast, please share my email, mordylevine@gmail.com, or visit mordylevine.com. Remember, it's not what you think.